Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello, and welcome to Mary versus the Movies with your host, Mary Jones.
And Dennis Lang.
And this is episode 69, River's Edge, which there are actually multiple movies called River's Edge or The River's Edge. So as far as I know, this is a movie from 1986.
It's about the story of Rivers Cuomo, the leader of Weezer.
Absolutely not. No.
Oh.
I will not.
I guess that's one of the other ones.
Sure. I hope not. Look, that first record I still like.
Yeah.
You know. Everything after, not my thing.
Pinkerton's okay.
Pinkerton is problematic.
Well, yeah, but
We'll leave it there.
yeah.
No, this is a movie that was brought to my attention by a friend and patron of the show, John Huston, who said that as he was reading John Darnielle's latest novel, they bring up this movie multiple times. Now, one, John Darnielle is, of course, the man behind The Mountain Goats.
Yeah.
And he's also a novelist and an essayist and all that stuff. I have been waiting to read his latest book.
And you're not allowed.
I'm not allowed until I've watched this movie. Well, I'm waiting for our vacation. It's, I'm going to read it, when we're down the shore. Because what I think that book is about, I've read like maybe the first chapter. And then I was just like, I'm going to save this. What I think that book is about is a guy who is investigating a murder that may have happened in the 80s and has to do with like the Satanic Panic and things like that. Okay. Which I find an endlessly fascinating subject, which is unfortunately relevant again.
Because of Stranger Things, I understand.
No, it's not. No. I wish that was the only reason. Yeah, we've been living through another kind of, we've been living through echoes of the Satanic Panic and a whole bunch of other stuff, which, look, you all know what's going on in the world right now, and it's terrible. We won't get into it. But I, of course, was a child during the Satanic Panic, and I was, of course, as a kid, I believed in all of the terrible stuff that they put on television. And then, you get a little older and you're like, wait a minute, no, none of this makes sense.
Did you see Mazes and Monsters?
I did not see Mazes and Monsters, which should be on this list.
Yeah.
I totally want to see that. But it's funny because growing up, yes, there was this idea that D&D was evil, but like my mother never raised me with any of that nonsense. Like no. Look, my mother's a devout Catholic, very faithful woman. She looks at all that Satanic Panic stuff and just like rolls her eyes. So like I didn't grow up with her telling me any of that stuff. It was just in the media everywhere. Okay. So I was never forbidden to be into fantasy or Dungeons and Dragons or anything. Like I watched the cartoon show Dungeons and Dragons every Saturday. My mother did not care. My mother wasn't paying attention either. But no, so I didn't grow up with the Satanic Panic or anything like that.
I played D&D, and that's where all my wealth and fame came from. Yeah. Anyway, no. So the book apparently has to do with that, and they bring up this movie. So I don't know if this film has anything to do with the Satanic Panic, or if it has to do with, I don't know, teenagers murdering a person, or like I don't know what kind of a movie this is. But they bring it up apparently in the novel, and the novel is about investigating a thing that happened years before. All right. The only other thing I know is that it stars Keanu Reeves. Or River Phoenix, we don't know.
No, look, you asked this last night, Dennis. Yeah, we were talking about we were discussing the episode, and I said, yeah, all I know is that like Keanu Reeves is in this, and Dennis says, and River Phoenix, right? I said, no, why? Why would River Phoenix be in this? And he just kind of stopped and said, I think just because it's called River's Edge. Yeah. And then he had to admit, no, he's probably just thinking about My Own Private Idaho.
Yeah. But still,
Which
maybe. He might be in there. We don't know.
I don't
I haven't
think he
seen
is.
it, so
No, I haven't either. I don't think River Phoenix is in this.
bit part.
Here's the thing. He might be in it. I don't know. I don't know who all is in this. I've never heard of this movie. I briefly saw the only other person I know who is in this movie is Crispin Glover.
Oh,
And this is 86, so it's like 2 years after Back to the Future. I don't really know anything else about it. It's just I know these two people are in it. This is early Keanu Reeves. This would be, I guess, a year before Bill and Ted. So, yeah, he's been in stuff.
whoa.
Yeah. He's not a superstar yet, but he's on his way up. I mean, this is when Keanu Reeves is starting to make a name for himself,
Yeah.
And then a couple years after that, it's like Parenthood and movies like that. So
is this John Wick the prequel?
God, wouldn't that be great? If this is just a movie about like teenage,
Jonathan Wick.
yeah, just killing his way through a high school or something, how he became an assassin.
I only love dogs.
Will this be a movie about teenagers murdering somebody? Will this be about Satanism? Will this be a reflection of the Satanic Panic? I don't know. Will Crispin Glover be very weird in it? Probably.
What river do you think?
Oh, wow. You know what? That's an interesting question because I don't know where this takes place. Is this set in California? Where do they have rivers anymore?
What's it? Cuyahoga? Is that the
one in Cleveland?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's the Cuyahoga.
We should each guess what river and see how.
All
close
right,
we
I'm
are.
going to go with the Green River.
Okay, where's that?
Isn't that in like Washington State where they had a bunch of murders?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. It's like near Seattle, or maybe
Right.
it goes through Seattle.
I'm gonna say Susquehanna.
Sure, why not? Nobody knows where the Susquehanna is.
I know. I figure I'll go to the other side of the country, and so like wherever it is, like one of us will be closer to it. So
That's fair. So,
it's gonna be the Nile.
oh my God, or it'd be like the Montana River or something.
Yeah. Oh, then you'd win.
That's true. It would be closer. Yeah, that's right.
I think the odds are in your favor, but like I have no idea.
So your choice is it takes place along the Susquehanna,
Yep.
and mine is it's along the Green River.
Yep.
Okay. Well, shall we go find out?
Sure.
We're all too young to fear the power of the storm. We have lost our hopes, we knew our dreams would still remain. Because nothing is impossible, nothing burns like fire in the rain. Fire in the rain.
Years ago, I went through this whole period where I was listening to a bunch of radio programs from the 30s and the 40s.
No.
Okay, so a couple years ago, I found on like archive.org,
Yeah.
you can find just about like all kinds of stuff. And I downloaded just a whole bunch of radio programs from the 30s and the 40s and just was, dipping in and out of them out of curiosity. There's a lot of like just, news from the Second World War and things like that.
See, I remember that. I
Yeah.
didn't remember if you were listening to like Fibber McGee or that kind of thing.
Well, I was doing that as well. I still really look Jack Benny. It's a great show.
Yeah.
Once you get past like the time period, there's sort of the inherent racism of. But whatever, the Jack Benny program is amazing. But I came across one like from that time period. I don't know how else to call it. And I came across one from 1945 as the war is winding down, where the focus is on the fact that, okay, the war is winding down, children are now going to be juvenile delinquents. And it was this idea that because of the war, dad has been out fighting and mom has been working in a factory. So nobody's been watching these kids this whole time. And the kids are running wild in the streets. And this is kind of the first iteration of that. So the idea of, first of all, the teenager.
Yeah.
Where you didn't go to work as soon as you were like 12. You stayed in school. And the idea of somebody's maybe not home watching after this child. Like, this is all a product of the Second World War and the Depression, okay?
Right.
Trust me, this is relevant, okay? Because this is a movie about juvenile delinquents,
Yeah.
okay? Much like Rebel Without a Cause is.
Right.
There are a lot of movies about this.
Mm-hmm.
This is the most realistic I've seen, though.
Yeah.
Because the soundtrack is very on point. It's a lot of like thrash
It's a lot of
there-
hardcore.
There's like 4 or 5 Slayer songs.
Yeah.
The Wipers.
Yeah. Agent Orange is in this. I mean, the music is perfect for these kids.
Yeah.
I just didn't like the score. But once you get past that, this movie is fascinating. And it is probably the most realistic juvenile delinquent film I've ever seen.
Yeah.
These kids remind me of people I knew growing up.
This is like Sister Ray
Yeah.
for teenagers.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly enough drugs and sex in it.
Yeah.
And of an unhappy variety. Mm-hmm. As I watched it, like the first 20 minutes, I think I paused it and I turned to you and said, "This is basically every biography I've ever read on like Kurt Cobain."
Yeah.
Because not as far as I know that he killed anyone, but there's something about the whole teenage dirtbag living, like this is set in Northern California, but they're talking about going off to Portland to get out of town. And, basically Northern California is not Southern California. It is much more the Pacific Northwest. You're in Cascadia.
You know what? It's pretty close to Green River.
It is. Yes.
You win.
I win.
I admit it was nowhere near Pittsburgh.
Wait a minute. The Susquehanna's not near Pittsburgh. That's the
wait.
Monongahela.
Sure.
The Susquehanna goes through Harrisburg.
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry.
Oh my God, you're from here.
I know. It's somewhere around here.
No, you don't even, Mike. Oh, I want a map of inside your head. What's it like in there? Yeah, so this is set in Northern California, like far in the north, enough that like it does not look like Los Angeles. It doesn't even look like San Francisco.
Yeah.
And when they
Although
went,
I think it was filmed near.
oh no, they filmed a lot of stuff down in LA, but there's some exterior stuff like setting in the location. It's obviously meant to be like Northern California, and especially because like the city they want to run away to is Portland.
Yeah.
Which I found interesting. Because it's like the mid 80s. And again, that's why I kept thinking about Nirvana. It was like, well, because they didn't start in Seattle. They started in Aberdeen and then went to, they lived in Portland for a while. And so I just kept thinking, like, these are the kind of kids who would be going to a Nirvana show in like 1987 when they're not killing their girlfriends.
Like their whole plan is like, I'm going to get away. And the thing is that this escape plan is before anyone knows that someone's been murdered.
Oh, yeah. No, this is just their daily life is, I'm in high school. I hate where I live. My family isn't really paying attention to me. Like, I have no prospects.
Yeah.
I just want to get out. And, I mean, I grew up in a place like that, I mean, Boyertown's like that.
Yeah.
There were characters in this movie. I mean, so... Keanu Reeves' little brother in this, who is just a monster, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm sitting here and about halfway through the movie, I suddenly remembered this kid I went to junior high with, who was basically this kid. And it's funny because sometimes he was kind of nice to me because, I was this weirdo. I mean, I wasn't even like just a nerd. I was just like this weird girl who dresses like a boy and doesn't want to talk to anybody. I don't know. And so like the brother just reminded me of this one kid I went to junior high with, and sometimes he was nice to me and sometimes he was a complete monster.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes that is how kids are when they're like 12, 13,
right.
Yeah,
junior high, that's the time of monsters.
And I kind of like that there is that kind of contrast actually between the kids who are that age in junior high and the actual teenagers in this movie.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, all the people playing them are like in their 20s. But Keanu Reeves' character has nuance. Yeah, he's a dirtbag. I mean, but like not in a bad way. And certainly he's the most affected by the murder that happens. In that, he's the one who's just like, I can't like let this, I can't sit with this. And we see him being nice to his little sister, and we see him, trying to, deal with like whatever his situation is with his mom. Like he is the most well-rounded of the characters, I think, in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he felt like a person you would know growing up, right? And a lot of these characters do. I mean, Lane, played by Crispin Glover, That's definitely a dude.
That's a dude
that we've all met.
Yeah, we know this dude. It's like, oh god, him. All the Slayer is pretty much whenever he turns on the car.
Yeah.
As soon as the car comes on.
Yeah.
I've been in that car.
If anything, you're close in age to when these characters. You would be about the same age as these kids.
Yeah, this all. I mean, like I was more like that terrible nerd.
Oh God, were you?
Oh yeah. Like I wasn't as like outspoken as him. But if there's anyone that I'm closest to, I'm probably closest to that dork.
Dennis, no.
I know, he's terrible.
He's the worst. Even the teacher hates him.
I know.
And like yells at him.
Rightfully so.
Yes.
Yell at him. I would yell at him. I would yell at me. Wake up, you moron.
So we're laughing a lot. This is a grim movie.
It really is.
At one point, you're like, "Oh man, this is a bit like watching Uncut Gems."
Yeah. It's the same. It's the same vibe where like, if Uncut Gems, here's our protagonist. He immediately does all the wrong things. You're like, oh my god, yeah. He's digging his own grave in front of us.
And because you said that as we were watching the movie, when we get to the end, when Keanu Reeves' little brother pulls the gun on him, I'm just like, here it comes. Because, of course, I'm thinking about Uncut Gems.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the movie doesn't end on quite as grim a note.
But that's what makes this movie work so well, is there's this gun, Chekhov's gun.
It's been fired several times in the film.
And it's been fired. It actually does affect the plot.
Yeah.
But this 12-year-old kid, brother of his, is kind of the smartest person in the movie. He figures things out. He like waits and watch. He's like Omar. You know? In The Wire. Like
he's also a bit like the kid who kills Omar in The Wire. Spoilers.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Look, guys, you've had plenty of time to catch up on The Wire. Yeah. Okay? But HBO's going to get rid of it any day now. Yeah. And you're only going to be able to watch Dr. Pimple Popper.
So the whole time, like it's almost like the ticking time bomb.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
In what's that famous movie?
Touch of Evil?
Yeah. Where the whole movie you keep expecting, he's gonna kill his brother.
Yeah.
Like, that's terrible. Like, because you keep seeing like the plot is kind of working itself out. So the plot is this one guy just murders his girlfriend and tells everyone. And everyone just goes and sees it, and then they don't report it. They're like, "Oh, that happened," and nobody knows what to do. Like nobody, they don't know who they are. They're all confused.
And I think that's realistic.
Yeah.
The kid also sees this, and because he's a child, he has that sense of, I have to have loyalty to these guys, who he kind of looks up to.
The other guys, their dream is to get out. This kid's dream is to smoke a joint.
Because he's 12.
No one knows what else to look for. Because, the adults in this movie, like, they're all lost. They have a mother, like, the father left, and so they have this guy, Tom, I think his name is.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and he's a monster.
Oh, he really is. I mean, we don't see a lot of him, but we just know that she obviously just needed somebody in her life, and he is not a good person to have. Be filling that role. But, and I felt for this mother. Like, there's not a lot in here. They don't build her character a lot. Yeah. But having lived with, like, a single mother, I really felt for her. Like, she's doing what she can, and she doesn't have a lot to work with. I don't know if the film wants us to judge her as being not a good mother, but the way I watch it, the fact that, like, Keanu Reeves' character is not actually a bad person, I don't think she's actually a bad mother. She is a mother with no resources. Yeah. She's barely holding it together. I felt bad for her.
And she's a nurse, right?
And she's a nurse, yeah. So I automatically felt, I automatically felt sympathy. I couldn't help it. The beginning of the movie is we see the little brother throwing a doll off a bridge into the river.
The Susquehanna.
It is definitely not the Susquehanna. It is a river in Northern California.
The Susquehanna doesn't go over there?
God, no. It does, as I said, it doesn't even touch Pittsburgh.
There's 3 rivers. One of them's got to be the Susquehanna.
It's definitely not. Oh my God. Look, let me get the atlas. Anyway. So he's throwing his little sister's doll into the river because he's a brat. He's a horrible little creep. He sees on the other bank John, whose real name is Samson, sitting and drinking beer next to the body of his girlfriend who he has strangled. And let's point out for a second, so he strangled her. She's nude.
we have a flashback of him strangle her. She had her clothes on, which means that he took her clothes off. He definitely violated the body, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, they don't spell it out, thank God, in the movie. But it's kind of hard not to draw that connection that he murders her. And when he finally describes, and we have a flashback to the murder, he talks about how he felt like all this power over her.
So while he's describing murdering her is the sex scene between Ione Skye and...
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah. It was.
I mean, it was about as weird as, like, you remember in Munich, the end of that?
I don't remember.
It's
that.
the same sort of thing where, like, was it Eric Bana is having sex with his wife, but also like it's intercutting with all like these murders and stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It kind of had that sort of feel.
Like
I felt like it was just done for like a weird like shock value. I don't know what they were trying to convey by having the sex scene between Keanu Reeves and Ione Skye at the same time as him talking about killing his girlfriend.
and then showing the flashback.
And then showing the flashback of it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, you could tie together, hey, it's sex and death. It's the two big impulses of, humanity. And it's like, yeah, that's true, I guess. I just felt like it was a little melodramatic. Part of what took me out of it is just that, like, Keanu Reeves is making a really funny face the whole time while she's on top of him. And I'm just like, I don't know. It's kind of like it was, I will say this, it was very unsexy.
Yeah.
You're hearing like, oh, it's a sex scene between teenagers. And I'm like, it is. You are not going to get hot watching this.
No.
This is not that at all.
These may be two of the most attractive people, and yet it doesn't work.
Oh, no. And I will say, like, their clothes are never off either.
Yeah.
Like, they're in a sleeping bag,
Yeah.
and, like, she leaves her T-shirt on. Like, it's not a salacious scene at all.
No.
And I don't think it's meant to be salacious.
No.
Because, again, they're intercutting with, John describing murdering his girlfriend. So I don't think you're supposed to take that from it. Beyond that, yeah, I don't know. John kills his girlfriend mostly just because he can. First, he gives this explanation of like, well, she was making fun of my mother. But then later he just kind of says, no, I had power over her and it was great.
Yeah.
That is basically how a psychopath would probably actually justify a murder. I mean, I've read some books on serial killers.
Yeah.
That's much more realistic than, I got mad at her. And it's weird because the film wants us to find that as really like horrifying as opposed to Dennis Hopper's character, who describes also having killed a girlfriend, but because he loved her, as if like supposedly that's somehow not as horrifying. That's also horrifying.
Yeah.
I don't know that the film wants us to kind of like say, no, they're both really horrifying. We're supposed to be sympathetic, I think, to Hopper's character, and I'm not. I can't.
I don't know if I got that. I don't know if you're supposed to be sympathetic with anyone.
You're supposed to be sympathetic with...
well, Keanu, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think maybe just Keanu. Of all of them.
Yeah, maybe Ione Skye.
I don't know. Like, I feel like, like he says, like, are we getting married? And she's like, no, let's get high or something. Like, I feel like...
I think that was just supposed to be a funny line.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, so he kills her, and then he decides to just tell all his friends at school.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I killed her. Nobody takes him seriously at first. And I mean, I certainly wouldn't. If somebody came and told me, yeah, I killed my girlfriend, I'd be like, yeah, okay, sure you did. So when they go, he takes them to see the body. They don't believe it. You see Crispin Glover poking her with a stick at first just to make sure it's real.
Yeah.
At first they think that she's playing a prank on them.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, there aren't a whole lot of teenage girls who would play a prank where she lays naked in the grass in the middle of a park like that. No, that's definitely not going to happen. But all right, fine. I get where they're going because you don't expect to be confronted with a corpse.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, this movie, I think, wants to say, oh, isn't it terrible that these kids didn't say anything for, like, a day, that nobody knew whether to turn them in or not. I think that's perfectly normal. I'm not saying it's right.
And it is based on an actual story that happened where it was 2 days where this guy raped and killed his girlfriend and then bragged about it.
And showed people the body, and people didn't say anything for, like, 2 days. I don't think that's very surprising. I've had horrible things happen in my family, not to me and not to my immediate, like, nuclear family, not in that way, but I've had horrible things happen in my family where you do end up processing it for a day, like, oh my God, what do we do now? Where do we go from here? Like, it's not always the first instinct, hey, let's call the cops. And, I mean, in this day and age, you sometimes wonder, is it worth calling the cops? But that's a different conversation. And not one that the film's really engaging in. But no, your first instinct is always just kind of like, wait, what did I even just see? What am I experiencing? I don't know that the film is necessarily saying they're bad for not coming forward right away. I think it's more like, yeah, you're in shock. Yeah. And I think it's normal to kind of say, I don't know how to process what I just was told, what I'm experiencing.
But also, none of them would think to tell their parents.
Oh, God,
because
no.
Their parents are all either just don't care about them or is going to fire a gun at anyone that looks out in the window. Like,
yeah, that happens at one point. One of the group of friends is this kid, Tony, that they go to like borrow his truck a couple times. And because it is nighttime, it's supposed to be like midnight that they're there, or maybe even 2 a.m. When they see Tony's dad sitting watching television and they're like, hey, we want to see Tony. The dad's response is to pick up a shotgun and fire it through the plate glass window of his house and break the window. And I mean, first, he knows these are his kids' friends. He can see them. He knows what they look like. And he's just like, I'm going to kill you. Look, I've had some parents of friends of mine who maybe don't like me. They've never brandished a gun at me. Yet.
Well, have you knocked on the window, dressed all in black, like you're about to rob them? Like,
I mean,
not
all in black.
Because Crispin Glover, like, definitely looked like a hoodlum.
Well,
he was definitely a hoodlum.
He didn't look like a hoodlum. He is a hoodlum.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
So maybe the appropriate response is to just shoot your shotgun at them.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, part of the film is this group of friends just trying to decide, what do we do? Do we turn him in? Do we not turn him in? Do we try to get him away from here and off to freedom? Which, I mean, that's a horrifying thought. Like, besides Lane, Crispin Glover's whole idea is that we got to make sure that John can get out of here and escape punishment. He said he's sorry for doing it, which, I mean, the guy's not sorry. We find that out later.
And the thing is, John isn't really asking for that.
No.
It's hard to see what he wants out of this.
No.
Like, he's just like, I did it.
The way that he's kind of like into the fact that he killed her, you get the sense that he'll do it again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like he has got some serious serial killer vibes.
Yeah.
And in part because he's so low key. But yeah, eventually Keanu's conscience starts gnawing at him.
Both he and Clarissa.
Yeah, Clarissa, who is Ione Skye. I think they're bothered by their own state of shock. As the shock starts to wear off, they're upset that they didn't have a more strong reaction in the moment.
Like, Clarissa has a picture of Jamie who was murdered.
They're friends.
Yeah.
She's upset with herself that she didn't even cry when she saw the body. I want to go to her and say, that's not unusual. That's not strange.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've cried at funerals sometimes, but I don't. I mean, granted, it's a different circumstance, but, I've been there when both, like, my stepdad died and when your mother died, and I didn't cry because you're still processing that this thing happened. And I think that's the most realistic thing in the film. You expect to have these melodramatic moments when somebody, shows you a body or when somebody tells you bad news, and you don't always have that response. Sometimes you just kind of sit there.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you are uncaring, and it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It just means that you haven't processed the event yet.
And I think when you're young, like, you just can't comprehend death.
Yeah.
Like, a body is just an object. Even if it's a person it's suddenly now it's an object.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and that's the thing.
And I think the younger you are, like, the more that's the case. Like, so, like, the 12-year-old, like, Stand By Me, it's all about, traveling to find this body.
Yeah.
And it's like this talisman or something.
This is kind of an interesting contrast with Stand By Me, actually.
Yeah.
Because
Stand By Me, that stars River Phoenix, by the way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I wasn't far off.
But you weren't close either. No. Do we want to talk about Dennis Hopper?
Yeah. Speaking of Dennis Hopper, the producers of this film is the same company that did Hoosiers.
Oh, okay.
It definitely has, like, the look of Hoosiers.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean, it's like, it feels almost documentary. Like, there's kind of a lack of style.
Yeah.
In it. in
like,
a way.
not that it's bland.
No.
And I liked this far more than I liked Hoosiers.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is something about this that it doesn't have kind of the grand cinema of a big movie.
Right.
There is something very small about it in the way that there is something small about Hoosiers.
But I feel like that's in a lot of like Down by Law and what's the Sex Lies and Videotape.
Yeah. Oh,
just that indie vibe in a way.
Which is funny because it's not an indie film at all. It was, I guess, MGM.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it definitely does not feel like a big studio movie in the same way that contemporary films might. So yeah, Dennis Hopper. That's interesting. He's definitely being Dennis Hopper in this.
Very, very much so.
Hopper's interesting. He started out in the studio system. Now he's in
Rebel Without
a Cause.
Yeah, he worshipped James Dean.
Yeah, and of course he went on to make Easy Rider.
Like you could see him looking at the script for this movie and like, yeah, I have to be in this movie.
Oh yeah. Well, now originally they wanted Harry Dean Stanton, I think, and Stanton's just like, no, give it to Hopper, and. Yeah, no, I think he's right for this. Yeah. He's perfectly right for this. Mm-hmm. The character's strange.
Very strange.
He killed his girlfriend like 20 years ago.
Because he loved her. And like, yeah, I realize that is a heck of a trope from like a billion blues songs. Yeah.
I get it. And it's weird to invoke that in this movie where we're definitely supposed to be horrified by an act of murder. At first, his own murder is kind of played for laughs because, you know, every time Lane, because he's the kid's weed dealer.
Yeah.
And every time when Lane comes over, he threatens Lane with a gun, which does not have any bullets. We find that out later. Talks about how he killed his girlfriend. And it's all basically this act of bravado. Everybody, you know, kind of laughs it off. Because, in fact, there's this great moment where, you know, you hear as they're leaving the house having scored a couple of joints, Keanu says, oh, did he show you the gun? And and Glover's just like, yep. and it's a joke to them, you know?
Like, did he bring out Ellie? And Ellie is...
It's a blow-up sex doll.
Yeah.
Yeah. He has a very weird relationship with this doll. I think he alludes to one point this idea that, like, the doll can't age. He's happier with a blow-up doll than a human being.
Yeah.
Like, he is a fascinating distillation of misogyny.
Right.
In a way that it's unexpressed or it's not obvious misogyny. It's more like the kind of casual, furious undercurrent that you find in people that I think is sometimes unexplored.
Right.
Like, the film doesn't really try to unpack his own ideas and feelings, and it just presents them as, at least he's not a serial killer, I guess? I don't know. He's not heroic in this movie, and in the end, he ends up killing John because he's horrified in the way that John is actually glorying in his own murder.
Yeah. It's
interesting that Hopper's character, you know, he keeps bringing up that he did this thing, and I guess the idea is that he's still haunted by what he did. Like, when John is trying to make small talk about, like, you know, killing this girl, you know, and talk about it as if, like, oh yeah, well, you killed a girl, I killed a girl. Hey, isn't that crazy?
This is how I did mine. Is how John
He's
puts
so
it.
casual about it.
Yeah.
You get the sense that Hopper's character is kind of horrified at the casualness that John is treating it emotionally. Does that make sense?
I get the feeling that Hopper's character has been in denial and built up this kind of like conspiracy like void to live in for 20 years.
Uh-huh.
And that meeting John like held a mirror up to him and he realized, oh. I'm terrible.
Yes.
He sees like Ellie as like, I can still love, I'm still a human. Seeing like a murderer in front of him.
And then the murderer takes his sex doll and starts like making it mimic fellatio.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't actually like whip it out or anything, but he essentially is mocking him.
Right.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't think of it the way you're putting it, but I think you're right. This kind of broke him.
Yeah.
You know, and he kind of like realized exactly what he is, because he thinks he's living in a blues song,
right?
And he's not,
right?
And yeah, I think you're right, and that's why he picks up the gun that finally has bullets in it, because John went and stole bullets.
Yeah,
and he picks up the gun and kills him.
And I also see it a little bit like the end of Mice and Men.
Yes,
it's like this guy can't be allowed to live in this world.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, look, we can debate, you know, I'm not going to get into a debate about the morality of that per se, but let's just say if you're going to accept the parameters of the film,
I guess I understand where he's coming from in that, like, yeah, this guy's going to kill again.
Yeah.
You know, will the cops stop him? Hey. Well, again, not the place to debate that. Yeah. It's interesting the more I think about his character, and a lot is left unsaid in the movie that you can kind of draw your own conclusions. Actually, that's one thing I like about this movie. It doesn't often go into saying, here's what you're supposed to think. The only time it does is when they're in the classroom with that one teacher who is, and then it's a lot of speechifying.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like when the teacher's just like, we're supposed to feel horrified and shocked by all this, those are the parts that I think are the worst in the movie, because it's like, I don't need the movie to actually explain this to me. I already know how we're supposed to feel because of the rest of the movie.
Right. The happy ending for this movie is that Matt, who is that's Keanu's character, his brother comes with a gun at the end.
Yeah, the brother is angry that Matt, Keanu Reeves, turned John into the cops.
Yeah.
And so, because this is a betrayal of loyalty and you're dealing with cops, and what do you think you're doing? So, and because also I'm the little brother and I think you've been mean to me because...
And he has been. He beat him up.
Yeah, but he beat him up because the kid was torturing their sister.
Yeah.
It's not unusually abusive. This is brothers just, I don't know.
No one has guidance. His mom has to work, and I'm just saying that like Keanu's like kind of speech to his brother at the end felt like it was like breaking a cycle of some kind.
Yes, where he apologizes.
Yeah, and he says like, "Yeah, I'm sorry I hurt you," and yeah, it's like, oh, finally some kind of breakthrough here.
Yeah, and so by doing that, the brother is convinced to put the gun down and hands it over back to Keanu, and yeah. And I mean, really, the end of the film is they find John's body at the river's edge. It's been shot by Dennis Hopper, and the cops show up, and they end up arresting Hopper. Basically everything gets tied up at the end, and they go to the funeral, and really, it's just sort of the end of a horrible episode in these kids' lives. Yeah. We don't know what happens to them from there. And I mean, again, that's pretty realistic. Bad things happen, and, people just kind of have to pick up and move on.
You know what? It reminds me a little bit of Heavenly Creatures. That was kind of like the sensational like news story in New Zealand, where, like it's idyllic. It's, hobbits live there. And and then I guess, was this in the 70s or 60s that this happened?
I thought it was the 50s.
Yeah, 50s.
Yeah.
That's right. In Christchurch.
Yeah.
These two girls in high school, like they murdered the one's mom in this terrible fashion, and like so everyone just knew it as this horrible thing that happened, and what that movie did was like just tried to understand the kids.
Yeah, through their own diaries and their own fantasies and whatnot. Yeah,
which was kind of fascinating. It's not really judging them, like they're not the monsters that like you can only see from like the end result.
Yeah,
it like you can see like it really tries to delve into like why they are the way they are and why they felt like trapped or something.
Yeah, and
it felt like this movie was doing the same thing with like here's this story of like, oh, these like there was this body. And they saw it and they didn't report it. What in the world is wrong with today's youth? And this movie was like, oh, let's think about it.
Yeah, it is sort of like, well, let's unpack this a little bit. Some of there's a little bit of society is to blame.
Yeah. There's
also a sort of, I think, trying to have some sort of forgiveness for people who are in shock.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting movie. It's a dark movie. It's a very dark film, and I'm always a little skeptical of anything that's the kids are delinquents today and the kids are out of control. Because I think that whole subject is very complicated, to be honest. And teenagers as a thing is only maybe 100 years old.
Yeah.
Adolescence has always existed, but social structures changed radically after the First World War, and into the Great Depression, and in ways that.
Oh, you haven't read any books about this. That's sarcasm, by the way. Mary read this huge monsters book. It was what was that book called?
Freedom from Fear.
Yeah.
I've read more than one book on the Great Depression, but I just finished this one in the spring. It won the Pulitzer in like 2000. It's really good.
And you'd been I felt like you've been reading it like our whole relationship.
It's a very long
it's
book.
It's huge. It's like tiny, like these really thin pages, and like
it's very long.
And you're like, oh, you should check it out. I'm like, yeah, check it out. Like, yeah, in my next lifetime. Let's see how my karma is. Just pick it up at the shore.
Yeah. Well, it is called Freedom from Fear. It's by David Kennedy. It's very good. But no, I mean, I'm always a little skeptical about stories of the kids today are running wild and it's dangerous. And it's like, yeah, that's been the story for 100 years.
Yeah.
And it's not so much that it's untrue, but it's sort of hard to unpack. Look, I'm not a sociologist, and I'm not, it's not really my place to say, are the kids all right or not? But it's interesting that this is something that people have been, arguing about and losing their minds over for 100 years. Yeah. And how much of it is tied to, well, we don't have children going to mines anymore. I guess that means they're all, murderers having orgies. Because that's really what it comes down to is like, idle hands are the devil's playthings. Yeah. It's this whole idea of if you're not at work and you're not under supervision at all times, you must be doing something horrible. And sometimes kids are doing something horrible, like murdering their girlfriends, but sometimes they're just hanging out and drinking and smoking weed, and it's fine. It's really not a big deal. Yeah, I don't know. Being a teenager is sort of a complicated thing that society hasn't figured out.
It just seems like that every few years there's some event or something that like makes people be like, see, I knew it,
I knew the kids were no good.
Yeah, like they just let that body sit there for 2 days.
They should all be in the military. Yeah. We should start them when they're 12. Yeah, I know.
Once again, we should really watch that movie about Charles Whitman in the 70s with Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
Because that also has like a kind of documentary style, like where it's not really judging what's happening. It's like, this happened. Now this is a fictional movie, like, but
it is inspired by an actual murder or two that happened in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was River's Edge, starring Keanu Reeves, Ione Skye, Dennis Hopper, Dan Roebuck. Did I say Crispin Glover?
Performances, everyone was great in this film.
Yes.
Everyone. Especially Keanu, like you can see why he became a star.
Oh, absolutely. He's fantastic in
Ione
this.
Skye was great. Yeah. Dennis Hopper and
Crispin Glover was a
yeah.
He was wild in this. He was great. He was great in this though. And even the kid, the little brother is good.
Oh, what's his name?
I'm not sure the actor.
It was supposed to be Corey Haim, and he had
pneumonia, I think. Yeah, so they cast
Joshua John Miller.
Okay.
And I don't think he's done much since then. And then there's
and we didn't even talk about the guy who plays our murderer.
Toilet. That's his name is Samson Toilette.
Yeah.
And because it's Toilette, they
call him John.
Yeah.
God.
That's such a teenager thing.
So, but the actor is
Daniel Roebuck.
Daniel Roebuck. You've seen him. Oh, you've seen him in things. Trust me. Let's see. He is Arzt. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, in
Dr. Arzt in Lost. He's the guy who gets blown up. And like he's in The Fugitive, and he's in a lot of stuff.
He was Jay Leno in The Late Shift.
Oh my God, was that him?
Yeah.
Oh man.
With
that crazy fake chin. I didn't realize that was him. That's great because he plays Leno as kind of a psycho.
Yeah.
Like, oh man.
I guess he has he had experience.
Yeah, and directed by I don't know, a guy who did
Tim Hunter.
Tim Hunter, who's mostly done television.
Yeah, he did like Breaking Bad and Mad Men.
Yeah, so I mean, he's done directed some great television shows, but he hasn't done a lot of feature films for whatever reason.
No.
Well, you can follow us on social media We are Mary vs. Movies on Twitter, and we are maryvsmovies@gmail.com. Please write to us with any comments, questions, complaints, or suggestions. We would love to hear from you. We are also Mary vs. Movies on Instagram, where you can follow us as we, update for every episode.
You've been doing good on that.
I have a lot of fun.
That's all Mary.
Yeah, I like
those.
pulling images, and sometimes I forget which Instagram account I'm on, and I'll like people's, stuff, and then I'll be like, oh wait, that's the podcast account. Oh, that's gonna look weird.
Unlike.
I know, it's like, do I unlike it now? That's weird. But yeah, so we're on Instagram, and sometimes I forget who I'm posting as. So we are available on all of the major platforms. We're on Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and review us, and we would really love it if you did that. We are on Stitcher and Spotify and, Google Play. You can go to the Libsyn website and get our RSS feed and plug it into whatever your podcatcher of choice is. We have a Patreon now where you can help support the show because, believe it or not, it does cost a little bit of money to do this. So you can go to Patreon/MaryVSMovies there and sign up for $3 a month. You will support the show, and we are moving well ahead with our swag.
Yeah, swag is coming.
Yeah, Dennis has gone and designed some really cool buttons and stickers, and I can't wait to start sending those out.
Yeah.
And hopefully soon we'll also have a TeePublic site up and running, and I still have to make a website. I know, isn't that terrible? Here we are, and I still haven't actually made it. I did, try to register something over at WordPress, but it's been a busy week.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So next week, oh my God, but next week is super exciting. You know how we were just talking about juvenile delinquents?
Yeah.
Strap in. Next episode?
Oh no.
Rock and Roll High School.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
They're showing it at the Ambler Theater.
I completely forgot.
So if you're listening to this and you want to come out with us, actually I might put this out there early because because it's happening the day this episode comes out. So I'm going to probably put this out on Twitter. We're going to see Rock and Roll High School at the Ambler Theater on August 11th, which means that the episode will come out on the 18th.
Yeah. That's 1980?
You know what?
It's not. It's like 1979, I think.
It's 79. I don't care. I don't care. Look, it's the Ramones. I don't. This is my show.
You know what? I wonder if it's within your lifetime.
I don't. Ooh.
That would be an interesting thing if it was only movies in your lifetime. That could be a rule bending thing.
See, that's the thing. I don't mind grandfathering in 1979.
Yeah.
So until next time.
It's people like you who are sending the country down the tubes. No sense of pride, no sense of loyalty, no sense of nothing, man.